From her involvement in Donald Trump's legal battles to unusual requests to Secret Service agents, here are a few of the reasons we're worried about Ivanka Trump. Donald Trump's presidential inauguration took place on January 20th, 2017, and was attended by a slew of family members, including his daughter, Ivanka Trump. However, it wasn't long before the event was hit by scandal, when Karl Racine, the Attorney General of Washington, D.C., launched a probe into how Trump's inauguration committee spent charitable funds it had received. Per Mother Jones, Racine alleged that the committee wrongfully used funds to pay for event space at Trump properties, including at the Trump International Hotel, meaning that the family personally benefited from money earmarked specifically for the inauguration. Ivanka found herself drawn into the scandal when it was revealed that she may have provided false information during her deposition during the inauguration lawsuit. During the deposition, Ivanka denied having any involvement in planning the inauguration. She further claimed that while she may have provided her opinion when asked, she wasn't actively involved in planning any events. However, documents and emails contradicted Ivanka's deposition, seemingly showing that Donald's daughter was in fact very involved in planning the inauguration. In March 2017, it was revealed that Donald Trump's daughter would be taking on an official role in her father's government as a federal employee of the White House. However, Ivanka faced some scrutiny in her new role, especially when it was uncovered that she'd used her own personal email address to conduct official White House business. In 2018, The Washington Post reported that Ivanka's actions may have breached federal records rules, not to mention posing a potential security risk. A representative from the Trump administration released a statement via the BBC suggesting that Ivanka had since ceased using her personal email to conduct official White House business. The statement also alleged that none of Ivanka's messages had contained any classified information and that she simply didn't understand the White House rules.
All of my emails that relate to any form of government work are all part of the public record. They're all stored on the White House system.
The BBC clarified that while White House employees are allowed to use personal email accounts for official business, they are required to preserve all government-related messages by forwarding them to an official work account within 20 days. This is due to the Presidential Records Act and Federal Records Act, which require an official public record of all government business. Whether or not Ivanka's decision to use a personal email address was a serious breach of government policy or not, it's clear that the president's daughter found herself in hot water as a result. Since the Trump administration left the White House in January 2021, new details have come to light about how the famous family operated while Donald Trump was president. In an analysis of Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner's earnings conducted by Crew, it was revealed that the couple's reported earnings were between $172 million and $640 million while they held positions in the White House. This was in spite of the fact that the couple refused to take salaries for their roles in the government in an attempt to overcome allegations of nepotism. The publication also alleged that Kushner and Ivanka failed to divest from certain business interests, which may have conflicted with their roles in the government. And according to Crew, Ivanka may have personally benefited from her role within the Trump presidential team, particularly in acquiring a number of trademarks related to her business while working with other countries. Crew also suggested that Ivanka was embroiled in a conflict of interest with her involvement in the Opportunity Zones program, which provides tax incentives to investors who agree to invest in low-income communities, as her husband personally benefited from the new law.
Both Ivanka and Jared Kushner have pushed for the program, and today Ivanka was by her father's side.
Christopher Steele was in charge of the Russia desk when he worked as an intelligence officer for the British Secret Intelligence Service. He went on to compile the infamous Steele dossier, which made a plethora of allegations about then-President Donald Trump, including the suggestion that he'd colluded with Russia even before the election. Somewhat surprisingly, ABC News revealed in 2019 that Ivanka Trump had actually met Steele approximately 10 years before his dossier was released.
The man is friends with Ivanka Trump.
Ivanka reportedly met Steele at a dinner in 2007 and remained in contact with the intelligence officer even after he left his role within the British intelligence service. Emails confirmed that the pair had planned to meet up, with a source suggesting that Ivanka and Steele did, in fact, have a meeting at Trump Tower at some point. ABC News alleged that Ivanka brokered the connection with Steele in her role as an executive vice president at the Trump Organization, in the hopes that Steele's own company, Orbis Business Intelligence, may have been able to further Trump's business interests abroad. In January 2021, The Washington Post broke some surprising news about Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. The publication reported that the couple's Secret Service security detail had been banned from using the toilets in Ivanka and Kushner's home in Washington, D.C. Instead, they'd apparently been forced to struggle to the nearest public restroom or porta potty, with sources revealing that the agents had even used toilets used by Barack Obama and Mike Pence's security details. Understandably, the daily search for a toilet was unsustainable for the security agents. As a result, the government decided to rent a basement studio close to the Kushner-Trump residence, which had its own toilet, in September 2017. The rent on the studio was $3,000, and by the end of Donald Trump's time in office, the cost had amounted to more than $100,000, according to the Washington Post. The White House initially denied reports that Ivanka and Kushner hadn't allowed their security detail to use the toilets in their home. However, a source alleged to the Washington Post that the family had, indeed, requested that the Secret Service agents didn't enter their house. Responding to the report, a spokesperson for the Secret Service told the publication, "Secret Service personnel do not request access to the facilities at private residences. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner have not denied Secret Service personnel access to their home, to include use of the restroom." In September 2020, the New York Times reported on the state of Donald Trump's finances, including his tax returns. The publication suggested that the former president regularly expensed expensive consulting fees to unnamed sources, which in turn lowered his tax liability. The New York Times further compared Trump's tax records to details Ivanka Trump had disclosed about her own finances when she started working in the White House in 2017. According to the publication, consulting fees received by Ivanka, totaling $747,622, matched payments made by Donald to an unnamed consultant. These were subsequently claimed as tax deductions, with the Trump Organization claiming the consulting fees were related to hotel business in Vancouver and Hawaii. Although details of the arrangement remain unclear, the New York Times suggested that Ivanka received consulting fees for projects she had also worked on as an executive of her father's companies. If Ivanka was, in fact, earning twice for the same projects, Donald's decision to write off huge consultancy fees as business expenses for tax purposes may be questionable. After taking on a high-profile role within the White House during Donald Trump's presidency, Ivanka Trump reportedly noticed some glaring changes taking place in her personal life. In November 2022, the New York Post quoted a source who suggested that Ivanka was sad that many of her friends had distanced themselves from her while she was working in politics. Natalie Portman, for example, revealed that she was no longer friendly with Ivanka or her husband, Jared Kushner, whom the actor met while studying at Harvard.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot
to tell.
funny to say about someone you were friends with becoming a supervillain.
Chelsea Clinton also publicly distanced herself from Ivanka during an interview on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, saying, "I've not spoken to her since 2016. I have no interest in being friends with someone who is not only complicit, but actively taking part in this administration's everyday collision of cruelty and incompetence." Ivanka reportedly once counted actors Blake Lively and Emmy Rossum as friends. But that all changed during the Trump presidency, too. Lively even publicly expressed her concern over the Trump administration's approach to issues involving women, which presumably led to her cutting ties with Ivanka.
There's a lot that's worrying me as a woman, as a mother, and not just that, but as a human being who cares about other human beings.
After it was projected that Joe Biden had beat Donald Trump in the 2020 presidential election, Trump vocally objected to the results, claimed that he had actually won, and even made allegations of voter fraud. In June 2022, a video deposition of Ivanka Trump was shown during congressional hearings, which were conducted by a House of Representatives Select Committee investigating the attack that took place on the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. During her deposition, Ivanka claimed that she didn't support her father's accusation that fraud had been committed during the 2020 presidential election. However, earlier video footage of Ivanka seemed to contradict this point of view. In June 2022, the New York Times revealed that it reviewed footage of Ivanka that had been filmed by a documentary crew in December 2020 for the three-part documentary Unprecedented. In it, Ivanka suggested that her father should indeed legally challenge the election results, especially as she believed that the legitimacy of elections was at stake. Ivanka's seemingly conflicting views, both aired at different times and in different spaces, make it impossible to decipher her true feelings on the matter. Once an avid supporter of her father's political career, Ivanka Trump has reportedly started to distance herself from his affairs. In March 2023, a source suggested to People magazine that Ivanka had realized that her dad could be, well, a little difficult sometimes.
Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe.
Apparently, that realization made her decide that she needed some space from him. This seemed to align with Ivanka's own statement, which she issued after Donald announced that he would be running for president again in 2024. She said, "This time around, I am choosing to prioritize my young children and the private life we are creating as a family. I do not plan to be involved in politics. While I will always love and support my father, going forward, I will do so outside the political arena." The New York Times also speculated on how Ivanka might react to Donald Trump's indictment and arraignment, especially as his legal troubles were unlikely to benefit her image in any way. For the time being, at least, Ivanka seems to have cut ties with Donald the politician. Donald Trump faced a civil fraud lawsuit brought against him by New York Attorney General Letitia James in 2023. Prior to the trial starting, James ruled that Trump had inflated the value of his wealth and some of his assets to benefit himself in business deals and in securing loans from financial bodies. In November 2023, Ivanka Trump was forced to give testimony in her father's civil fraud trial regarding her own involvement in his business affairs. According to the Associated Press, Ivanka suggested that she had nothing to do with her father's personal finances. She also claimed that Donald's business ventures had all been incredibly successful. Attorney General James appeared to take a different view from Ivanka, which she shared with the press outside the courtroom.
She was enriched, and clearly you cannot distance yourself from that fact.